Hey there YouTube, welcome back to the Art Ninja Gaming channel. I am Art Ninja and this is the first episode of the Mortal Realms Monday painting tutorials. So just a little bit on Mortal Realms before we get started. It is a weekly magazine produced by Hatchet Artworks for Games Workshop, based around the Warhammer Age of Sigmar game. The basis around it is that it comes out weekly, and every week you'll get a small selection of miniatures or battlefield terrain based around one of two armies, the Stormcast Eternals and the Nighthaunts. I do have a weekly video for each magazine, so I'll put a link up for that, and you can go check that out. The idea for Mortal Realm Monday is every Monday that the magazine, I will paint up a model from that week's issue or the previous week's issue. So for this week it will be a Stormcast Eternal Sequitor. I've got an image of the Games Workshop copy or box art for it just up here. We're not going to paint to that level. This is more of a beginner's tutorial, so we're going to do what we would call battle ready. So it's going to be a nice artwork, something that you can, or a nice nicely painted model for the battlefield, so that you can get gaming. But it's not something that you would have, you wouldn't call it a professional look for photography and stuff like that, but it is still a quality to be proud of. So just sort some out there. So what I'll do, I've tried to get as much of a setup here as possible. You can see what I'm doing here in terms of mixing and palette wise. Obviously I've got a water pot here. If you don't have paint handles such as I have here, you can put a bit of tacky blue tack or white tack on the bottom. Use an old paint pot, either upside down, white way up, whatever, and just tack them to this. Otherwise just hold them by the base. They are big enough bases on these models, so you can hold them by the base. It's just if you can get yourself one of these painting handles, I do highly recommend them. They save so much on your hand cramping up trying to hold just the base. It's much easier to hold something like this, and you can turn it around. What I'll do is put down in the description a link to both the Mortal Realms magazine website page, so you can go and check more out there. And if you decide to subscribe or buy previous issues, you can do that through that link down there. It's not an affiliate link or anything, it's just one that I'll grab off the internet, so you guys can go and check that out. And also down in the description will be a list of all the paints used for this model. I'm not using the exact paints needed. I don't have a huge array of paints. I do have the majority of what is needed for this model, so there will be a little bit of mixing, but this is, it's my way of how I paint models, and it's to give you an idea of more the technique of how to do certain things, how to layer up paints and stuff like that. Basically we'll be applying a base coat of each colour, then a wash over the whole model to get the shades in the recesses, then reapplying the base colour in certain areas. Then we'll go on with a layer paint over the sort of the raised edges, sort of along here, along the cloak, down into some of this recess, this area here, this area up here, and then an edge highlight just off the very tops of anything that would catch the most light, sort of around the edges here and stuff like that. And that'll be ready. So first of all, we'll do the blue sections. So some Cantor blue there. Give the pot a good shake. Get some paint out. It's best to put some paint onto a palette rather than trying to go, dip into the pot. Especially with the Games Workshop base paints, they do come out quite thick. So we'll just put some paint down there. Just a little bit of water. Put that down there. Wash the brush off. And then just a little bit more water, and then we'll mix that up. Right, so everywhere that is blue, we want to paint this on. It's not going to all go on in one smooth coat. Don't try to do that. You'll end up, you know, collecting paint into a blob or whatever. You just put too much of a layer on. Just get a nice even coat. Don't worry if it's not perfect. It will take 2, maybe 3 layers, or 3 coats. So just paint on. Nice, you know, steady brush strokes. Like I said, don't worry about going over onto places that this isn't coloured, because they're going to have a few layers of paint on them anyway. You'll notice I'm not using a wet palette here. Normally I do, but sometimes they can get a little bit annoying, and I like to, you know, not everybody has them, so it's easier if I can show you the way that you may have it. If you have a wet palette and you know, you're confident with using that, then great. If not, at least you can see that it's how it's done. If you're not using a wet palette, do be sure to keep your paints hydrated a little bit. You can see I've got a little drop of water on just on the inside of the cup here, so rather than touching straight down into what will eventually be dirty water, I'm just touching into that little drop just to wet my brush a little bit, thin the paint down as it starts to dry, pull some more of that non-mixed paint or non-diluted paint into it, and yeah, just get a smooth even coat on. The inside is, I do believe that's white, so obviously just paint the outside of the blue robe in the blue. Don't worry about going too much over the edge into the inside, but do obviously try to avoid it if you can. And we'll paint along the bottom here. Try not to go back over any paint that you've already laid down whilst it's wet or tacky. What you'll end up doing is pulling the paint up slightly before it's had time to dry. So this paint does dry relatively quick. So if you, by the time you've done all the blue areas, the starting areas, you know, the places that we started, it should be dry enough for us to go back and put on a second layer without having to wait too long. So just get in here. These little bits will do behind. Right, and then on top of the pauldrons here, I get a layer up here. Again, don't worry too much about going onto them gold areas. Obviously, as we progress through the model, you want to start getting a little bit neater so that you're not going onto areas that you've already painted. But for this first layer, it's not too much of a problem if you do go over slightly. Right, so once I finish this layer, I'll go back over, finish the other layers, and we'll come back once I've got the smooth coat on, so then you can see what it looks like and get your model to that, and then we can carry on from there. Obviously you can pause this at any time anyway. Right, so that's all the initial blue areas. So I'll catch you guys in a second. Okay, so there we have 3 even layers of Cantor blue to get a nice smooth blue finish there. So next up will be all the gold areas, and for that we will use Retributor Armour. So again, give the pot a shake. Right, and again, oh, take some out, put it onto the palette. If you're using a wet palette, you may not need to put quite as much as this, but I find with a dry palette, if you have a slightly larger area of paint there, then it takes a little bit longer to dry on the palette. So we'll just dab the brush slightly, a small pool of water go in there. There we go. If you notice that your water is starting to dirty up too much, at the minute this isn't too bad for the colours we're using, but you know, it does help to have a second pot of water, for one for washing your brush in and one for mixing your paint or thinning your paint. What I tend to do is have a little plastic egg holder for, you know, dipping eggs in, and I just fill that with water, just for clean water, just to put down on here. Right, so now we need to do all the gold areas. So again, thin layers, obviously not too thin, but enough to coat the model in 2 to 3 layers. Obviously try and be a little bit neater with this as you go in near the blue. You don't want to have to go, you know, you don't want to go onto the blue. If you do, don't worry too much, you can go back over and neaten it up slightly, but if you can help it, obviously try and keep it as neat as possible. Just put the brush on, and then just a light bit of pressure, you can sort of spread the brush out to the thickness of the area that you're doing, and then that you can sort of just get that to touch into the area. Then I've watered that down a little bit too much. It's a little bit thinner, this gold paint, even though it is a base paint. It tends to be a little bit thinner than some of the other colours, but that's fine. Right, so obviously there's quite a bit of gold to do on this, so while I crack on with that, I'll come back once I've done the first layer and you can have a quick look, and I'll see you in a few seconds. Just back for a quick pointer while I'm doing this part, guys, but with the head, obviously don't forget to get down in around the neck area, but don't jab your brush harshly down into the area. You know, try and sort of push it gently and get the paint deposited down there, because obviously you don't want to jab your brush down and bend all the bristles up. You know, you want to try and take care of your brushes, and that way they'll last longer. And about brush care and, you know, general tools and stuff like that, I do have a video, you can go and check that out on brush maintenance and all that good stuff, tools of the trade and that. Again, I'll put a link to that just up in the corner there, and you can check that out, as well as some of the other tutorial videos on there, and I will catch you guys in a minute. Okay, so we've got all the gold done there, or pretty much. That is the first layer, so you can see it's probably only going to need one more layer. It goes on a little bit nicer than the blue. So we'll go back in, put in the second layer, and then I'll catch you guys after I've done that. Okay, so there we have all our gold areas done with the second layer, and as you can see, that it's nice and smooth. All those gold details in there, and so now we'll move on to the black areas for the cloth gauntlet covers here. Just a little band in here that you can see, obviously the same on the other side, and then in between his armor plate and his belt you've got just a band in there that does go all the way around. It's like an Under Armour, and then anywhere else that would be black and or silver. I will actually do this in black as well before dry brushing a silver over the top. The same with the little element here, and I do believe the banding around the middle of this is also black, so we'll paint that part black as well. So we'll just get onto that now. So for this we are going to use Abaddon Black. Again, this is a base coat. This is quite a thick one. This is a bit of an older paint, this one that I've got here, so it is a little bit thicker than yours maybe if you're using newer paints. That's fine. Again, just add a little bit of water to thin it down. Obviously the amount of water that you add to your paints depends on the thickness of them, and whether or not you're using the same brands. Different brands do different sort of thicknesses. Just find out, you know, what goes on the smoothest for you without you leaving, you know, going too watery and running, or too thick and sort of blobbing up details. So just get the, like I say, it's always better to do more layers than one thick one. And again, don't worry too much about going onto the gold, but if you can avoid it, do so. It does take a bit of a steady hand. Some people would do this black stage first, but this is just the way that I personally work. If you want to do this area first, that's perfectly fine. After all, painting is a personal thing. You know, you do what you want in the way that you want to do it, as long as you're happy with the end result, is all that really matters. So as much as I'm, you know, showing you guys what to do, it's more a how to that you can take ideas from, rather than a you must do it this way. So use what I show you here, or take what I show you here, and, you know, do with it what you will. If you want to follow it step by step using the exact same and you're happy with the results, it's perfectly fine. If you want to do the same but in your own, you know, in a different order, nothing wrong with that either. So I'll just get on with doing these black areas, and be back with you in a few minutes. Okay, so there we have all the black areas done. 2 layers, or 2 or 3 layers on everything except the top of the maul here, and anything else that's going to be silver. That just had a quick light brush of the black, just sort of as a base coat for the silver that will be over the top of it. So just gently over the top, but everything else, a couple of layers, and that is our black done. So next will be the robe area across here, down here, and the small hooded area at the back there. And for that we're going to use a Shupty bone. Now it is a layer paint, so it will need a few layers to get this smooth, but it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, as we are going to put a wash over the top of this and then put another couple of layers of this back on. But again, obviously try and get a nice smooth coat on there. So again, because this is a layer paint, it doesn't require a lot of water to thin this down. They are quite thin compared to the base colours anyway. So we'll just get a nice smooth layer on here. Actually be a bit too thin. Like I say, this one, it is going to take a few layers. You're probably looking 4, maybe 5 layers to get this on smoothly. You could go in with a base coat, something like a light brown or something, but personally I just do it this way. Right, now the underside of this robe or loincloth that you can see folded here is actually red, so make sure to leave that bit. Obviously it's folded over on itself, so the underside is showing, and obviously getting that area there, and then just all of the hood here. So yep, I'll get this and the back of the hood done, get a few layers on, and then I'll be back with you in a second. Right, just while I'm putting the second coat on here, guys, I thought I'd jump back in. Couple of other things about watering the paint down, thinning it down slightly. It does increase or reduce the drying time, sorry, so the water will evaporate quicker, and it will dry a little bit quicker, so you don't get quite as long to work with the paint, which obviously for doing thin layers is a good thing, but if you want to do something like wet blending, then obviously you want less water and more paint. Another thing with watering or diluting the paint down is you're increasing the liquid and reducing the actual pigment, or the quantity of pigment that is in there, so you're actually applying less paint than you would be if you were using, you know, neat paint, which is why it takes a few more layers. And on top of that, because the paint is thinner, it is less likely to leave brush strokes in the paint, so you get a nice smooth paint instead of a thick one with sort of streaks in it from the bristles in the brush. So yeah, I just thought I'd jump in and throw that there, and so I'll be back in a bit, guys. Okay guys, so there we have it, the Ashapti bone layer all done. That took about 4 layers, I think that was. And right, so that's that done. Next on, we'll do the Mephiston red, which will be for the handle here, and just a little bit under here, and the inner side of the robe just down here. I do think that is it for that one. So yeah, just the inner side of that part. So there we go. That will be the Mephiston red there. So again, don't need a lot of this one. Only a couple of small areas. Rinse the brush off, dry it, and then just take up a couple of the drops there, which is more than enough to mix in with a small amount of this paint to get it to the consistency that we need. There we go. So start with the loincloth here. Again, this is a base coat, so we'll probably only take a couple of layers of this one. What I'm trying to do is just get it just down to where it meets the blue without actually hitting the blue, but trying to get a nice smooth line there, and then obviously along here, bring that up on that edge, and then as it folds under here, that will then thin out and come up along the side here. You could leave this the Ashapti bone if you wanted to. That's all I'm going to do is bring that like that, and then just, oh, model's coming off the base there where he's not fully glued on. The reason I've not glued him onto the base yet is that if you remove him, you can then get into all the underside details under here when it comes to painting the base at the end. So I may just need the one and a bit coat. That's gone on quite nicely. And again, just wipe it off there. Alright, and then in the handle here, does help to be a little bit thinner. There is some detailing on this handle, but we will dry brush over this to get some highlight on there. Small bit under there, and then just in his palm there. Right, so that is that. Nice and easy, quick and simple. Alright, next off is the white on the inside of the blue robe, and for that, we are using ceramite white right there. Alright, this is a base paint, so it will go on nicely, but again, you will want to thin it. Just be careful on how much you do thin white, as it is a hard paint to get thin, consistent layers anyway, to get a good coverage, is what I'm trying to say. It's a hard one to get a good coverage with. So rinse the brush, drop of water, thin it down. Here we go. So basically just in this area in here. So whilst we're doing this, I'm not going to skip the video for this bit, is that it won't take long. So I will take this chance to obviously thank you guys for you know, joining me and sticking with me so far. It is appreciated. If you do like the video, then please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Lets me know that I'm doing the right thing. And if you'd like to see more tutorials and painting videos, then hit that subscribe button and you'll get notifications of when those are uploaded. Like I say, with this particular series, Mortal Realms will be every Monday with Mortal Realms Monday, and I do live stream as well on the Monday. So the way that I'll be doing it is I'll paint one of the models like this from the previous week's magazine, previous week's issue, so you guys can get, you know, a look on how to get your models battle ready. On live stream I do a more in-depth go at it, and then the idea is for Patreon I will do more in-depth tutorials, getting it up to more sort of, not so much competition quality, but you know, up there, photographer quality, something that you can be really proud of, display quality. I think Games Workshop call it parade ready. So that will be up on the Patreon, but that won't necessarily be Mortal Realms, that will be various videos and tutorials. So if you'd like to get in on that, then you know, once I've got them tiers up and running, check that out. If you want to show some support anyway, jump in on the lower tier, and then when the other tiers come out, you'll have the option to upgrade or, you know, further support me with that. I think for this it is pretty much that, and then just the underside here. Obviously links for all of that will be down in the video description there. And we'll just get on with this. I may have to touch that up with the blue a little bit. So just wait for some of that white to dry there. What I will look into as well is maybe setting up a Discord or something, and you guys can jump in on that and show me pictures of your models, you know, what you're doing, whether it's anything to do with what we're doing here or Mortal Realms, you know, if you've got a little bit further in on the issues, or anything else that you're doing that's miniature related, whether it's Games Workshop or anything else, you know, you'd be able to show up there. Or if you decide to support me through the Patreon, then you can post up in there as well. Obviously that's Patreon members only, so you know, I'll be able to see it. If you want any tips or help with anything, I'll do what I can. Back under here. So that's 2 coats, so just let that dry a little bit more, and then we'll go back in for a third one. Just going to rinse the brush there. A little bit thickened up a little bit, so a bit more water, thin that back down. Make sure that I'm in shot here. Right, there we go. Right, so I'll just grab a little bit more blue, just touch up the edges of those robes. Obviously you can do the same. You know, don't ever be sort of embarrassed or ashamed that you need to touch up areas. You know, even the world's best don't always have the steadiest of hands, and sometimes, you know, you need to touch up a little bit. You're not going to get a good model if you don't touch up. So just finish off these little areas, just neaten it up. Also, if there's any other tutorials that you would like to see me do, again, you know, regardless of what it's on, as long as it's model miniature related, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. Right, just a little bit of gold on his foot there, some of the white went on. There we go. Just a little bit in there. Right, so the final piece, just going to go over the hammer here, the top of his crown piece here, the pendant and the little gem here in his lightning bolt. I'm going to do that with iron breaker. You can use something like a ring fang steel or a bolt gun metal. It's entirely up to you, but any kind of silver pretty much works. It's going to have a layer, a shade of Nuln Oil thrown over the top anyway. Alright, so we'll just grab the silver here. We can use this one neat. I don't really tend to dilute the silver or water it down. And just gently brush over the top. We are going to put Nuln Oil over this anyway, so don't worry too much about getting it into recesses, especially with these pendants being as small as they are. What I'm doing here is almost like a sort of a dry brush technique, but with a little bit more paint on the brush than you would normally have. So it's more like a loaded dry brush, just so we can leave a few areas which is going to have the Nuln Oil in it anyway. You can see what it's done is it's got the silver in there, but it's left some of the darker edges in there. Right, just a couple of small little bits of touch up here. A little bit more shupty bone. There we go. So aside from the gem here, which we'll paint when we come to doing the highlights as it uses a lighter blue, he is essentially done. He is what you could call battle ready. If you were, if you wanted to use him like this, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But obviously we'll go on and we'll put in a wash and then another layer and some highlights. But like I say, for now he is essentially done, and it would be perfectly fine for you to leave it like this. But we'll go in and we'll just put a quick wash into this. So we've got a couple of washes that we're going to use. The first one being, and you can use this one straight from the pot, is Nuln Oil. Just get that there. So Nuln Oil, and all you do is you want a sort of a quite heavy, quite a thick brush with a good body to it. That way it soaks up the oil right up into it. And then we're just going to paint this over the blue areas, and the idea is to get it to flow down into the recesses. A little bit too much there, but we can pull that off. I'm actually going to dilute this a little bit. I think again it's an older one, so it's thickened up a little bit as the medium has evaporated and left the pigment behind. So just to get a little bit more flow, not too much water, otherwise it will change the property of it and it won't flow right, but just enough to get it thin for what we need. Let's have a look. That's better. Again, if you've got a new pot, you shouldn't have to do that, but if you do want to, you can. And all we're doing is just trying to cover the model in the blue areas and up against anything, especially concentrating on those deep recesses. So if too much goes on, just go back over it and pick it off. I will do a tutorial on washes. It goes into a bit more, in depth with it, and will explain it a lot better than I'm doing here. But again, this is more just to show you on how to paint one of these guys up, rather than a complete technique tutorial. So over the steel areas, what you're looking for on any flat surfaces, just sort of this dark area here, and obviously any recessed areas, you want it to fully sink in. So over the top of this here, so you got right up against the edge there, and obviously on this one and this little piece here, and put it up against the gold there, right in the middle of the emblem there. And what you want to do is basically pull it up against the edge that you want the oil to sit. Here we are, coming off camera. So up against the edge, just pull it off of that, we don't want it on there. Up against this edge, up against this. Don't worry too much about blotching, we can get rid of that with the layer of paint that we're going to put back over the top. And then we want just in there the same thing. Just grab it a little bit more. There we go, so that's that part. For the other shade, the other wash, you can either wait for this to dry, the Nuln Oil to dry, and then put the other one on, or if you're careful you can go straight in. So for this one we are using Agrak's Earth shade. And we want to do that on any of the cloth areas along here. Again, painting it up into the recesses. There we go, you can see that goes in quite nicely, this one. Down in here. Try and get rid of any sort of bubbles that you get like that, otherwise they will dry with a ring, and you don't want that. Dry the brush off, pick that out a little bit, especially that one. And what you don't want to do is, when this is drying after a bit, don't go back over with a wash, because you'll move the paint and you end up with a bit of a weird look there. So just do around the back here. Obviously you can see some of the Nuln oil got in there. Again, it doesn't matter too much. We are going to put a coat back over this. And then the other places that you want to do this does work better with a gloss one, but you can do it just as easy with the regular Agrax. But you want to go over all the gold areas and get that into the recesses of those. If you can push it down into the recesses rather than leave it on the flat areas, that'll be even better. But if not, don't worry too much. So just pull it into the areas there, down in here, under the arm. Into the hand here and here. Dry your brush off and you can pull it back out of areas. Pull that back in there a little bit. Right, and there we go. So we'll just let them dry. Rinse the brush off. So you want to let these oils fully dry now before going ahead with the next layers. And what we'll do is we'll come back in with the base colours that we laid down, and we'll just paint all the higher edges, leaving the darker recesses how they are, or how they should be. So that brings us to the end of part 1. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you can keep up to date with more videos, more tutorials, and do check those links down below for Patreon, Twitter, Twitch and Instagram. And if you'd like to check out part 2, we will finish the model, including the base and the second layers. I will catch you guys there.